Fox 10 News at 9.
Okay, back to reality for a lot of people who followed this trial. It was a trial that had people glued to their televisions across this country. Casey Anthony accused of killing her own daughter and then dumping her in a swamp.
Today, a nail-biting moment in an Orlando courtroom, the jury delivering this stunning verdict.
As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
The nerves turning to tears and then hugs all around for Casey's defense team. The 25-year-old was declared not guilty of murder in the death of her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee. Now, she had been facing a possible death sentence if she'd been found guilty. However, the jury did find Anthony guilty of giving false information to law enforcement in connection with this case.
Reaction has been pouring in on this verdict all day long. Though a lot of people are shocked by the verdict, there are some who aren't, including an alternate juror on the case. Kelly has it all live with that story tonight. Kelly?
Yeah, John, that alternate juror spoke to Fox News by phone tonight. He says he would have reached the same conclusion as the rest of the jurors. For him, the weakest part of the prosecution's case came down to motive.
One thing that the prosecution failed to do was they did not, show motive. What would have driven a reasonably good mother to do such an action? And they could not, I don't think they overcame that.
Alternate juror Russell Huchler says none of the evidence presented by prosecutors, not the chloroform, the trunk of the car, or duct tape, made much of an impression on him since prosecutors couldn't answer two main questions. What caused Kaylee's death? And what motive did her mother have for killing her?
From all appearances, from what the witnesses had said, Casey, was a good mother. And there was no indication that there was, any problems between her and, Kaylee that would have resulted in such a, horrific event.
It was a panel of 7 women and 5 men that found Casey Anthony not guilty of murdering her daughter. Jury consultant Dennis Elias doesn't believe gender made a difference in the outcome. He says this was a jury who didn't allow their emotions to cloud their judgment.
That jury probably really wanted to be able to go home with a conviction because the nature of the allegations is horrendous.
None of the jurors chose to address the media. He says some will probably go through counseling. The public outcry against their decision, difficult to deal with.
Many people were disappointed, but only 12 people showed up. 12 people heard all the evidence. 12 people made this decision.
And Casey Anthony faces a maximum of 4 years behind bars, but because of time served, she could be released as early as the end of the week. Reporting live tonight, I'm Kelly Hessedall, Fox 10 News.
Thanks, Kelly. Joining us tonight is criminal defense attorney Dwane Cates. Dwane, thanks for joining us. How is it that an entire nation, in overwhelming numbers, can think this woman is guilty of this crime and this jury in Orlando sees it a completely different way?
Well, because they had a totally different perspective than the average person did. This jury sat in the courtroom, okay? They didn't get to see the Nancy Grace show. They didn't get to see all the legal pundits. All they saw was what happened in the courtroom. And as far as that goes, they only got to see a part of what happened in the courtroom. They didn't get to see the arguing of motions. All they saw was the evidence. And from the evidence, they didn't find that the state had met their burden of proof.
There is a difference, though, between not innocent and not proven, right? In other words, she could have done this crime, and the jury may even think she did the crime, but it was not proven in court.
Absolutely, and when I do trials, I have a board that says, guilt highly likely, guilt probable, and at the end of the day, all those, guilt highly likely is not guilty because you got to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And it doesn't mean that she was found innocent. It didn't mean she didn't do it. It just means that the state didn't put on enough evidence to prove that Casey Anthony was guilty of murder. Okay, tell me if you think this so-called CSI effect came into play here, where we have been conditioned now through television shows that these things are slam dunk. We've got the DNA. We can link the perpetrator to the crime. It is right there for the jury. They didn't really have all of this because the body was in such bad shape. They didn't have that. I mean, are juries now expecting this thing to just come out before them and it's a slam dunk? I think CSI has some effect. I mean, the American public now is used to crimes being solved in 30 minutes and somebody walking through a door with a white lab coat going, here's the answer, and it proves guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But in this case, what happened was the state just didn't have enough evidence. And what the prosecutors did was they tried to make the jury hate Casey Anthony. I mean, that's the party, and that's the pictures of her dancing.
But that's not murder. I mean, hating her does not equate to murder.
It doesn't. But
quickly, let me ask you this. For people out there who are just incensed with this verdict, what would you say to them tonight to try to reassure them that the system works?
I would tell them that this verdict today was a victory for the Constitution of the United States. When a person can go on trial and be hated by the general public, vilified in the press, trashed by legal pundits left and right, and come out with a not guilty verdict because there wasn't enough evidence, that's the Constitution of the United States being defended by a criminal defense lawyer.
And again, doesn't mean she didn't do it. It just means it was not proven in that court. Dwane Cates, thanks as always for your time. Appreciate it.